How to Kill America in 3 Easy Steps. I have so much bullet points flowing through my head, probably about 20. I didn't even bother to write them down because if I miss a few, the evidence is still more than overwhelming. There's such a confluence, almost a perfect storm of events killing America. Let me explain what some of them are. I mean, obviously, it's not just America, other countries as well, but America pinpointed predominantly by these factors. So, the first, obviously, is the pandemic. And I'm only going to say a few words about this because I'm going to get more into fiscal policy and other factors. But the pandemic impacted the whole world, but America disproportionately. I'm not going to talk about politics and some of the reasons for that, but America has been disproportionately affected by the pandemic. Secondly is fiscal policy. The stimulus, and we do need some stimulus because, people are hurting, but a lot of the stimulus is going towards, corporate, and the stock market is on fire. I mean, there is, also the Robinhood investors, but the amount of money that the average person gets is just a pittance. It's just basically camouflage. It's been a huge wealth transfer, back in 2008 and continuing. The federal government has basically just, propped up the banks and the corporations for years. And, the little guy gets a few pennies just so that they don't, riot in the streets. But this is one reason why crypto is so big now is because, these inflationary pressures. I mean, there's deflationary pressures also, like I talked about, Kathy Wood, innovation and also, cost cutting. So it's not all inflationary, but, America is losing, their wealth by the devaluation of the dollar. A couple other factors. One is that the loss of retail because of, e-commerce. America has a huge retail footprint. Like if you look at other countries, I forget the exact figures, but it's like 5 times or 7 times or 9 times. It's some huge number. The amount of concentrated retail space in America versus other countries is huge, especially compared to China, because China has a mobile-first economy for a long time. So when retail gets destroyed, it's basically like hollowing out America. Like first there was manufacturing hollowing out America. That was the first wave. The second wave is retail hollowing out America because America has a huge retail footprint. So when you crush retail, you crush America. The next one is government taking over corporations, basically socialism. Like all the stimulus, the government is getting more and more control over companies. Like in 2008 when they did the bailouts, there was like direct control. But now there's all kinds of purse strings. Like the government is doing far overreach. Like a lot of states are suing, 13 of them, I believe, are suing the government because the government is doing all kinds of strings attached. Like they said that because of the stimulus, the states, if they accept the stimulus payments, that they can't do tax cuts, and the government is just like basically infiltrating. Like now with all this money going to EVs and other corporate entities, manufacturing, the government's going to have their tentacles in everything. Basically, it's going to be federalism versus the states. I mean, the power of the federal government is becoming paramount. Another thing is immigration. Like I am for immigration because, like in a path to citizenship, because I think America is greater. When we take take on the best in the world. I mean, America has always been an immigrant nation, but I think it has to be done lawfully. It has to be done carefully. I think that if we just flood our borders, then I think we're going to run into problems. And, some of the other factors related to the killing of America, some I think is kind of just like a moral decay. I mean, I remember even when I was young, and I'm only 55, people, just everybody had a work ethic. I think like in the Depression, my dad came from the Depression, people, were happy for very little, because nobody had anything. My dad said everybody loved each other or helped each other because, nobody was better than anybody else economically. Nobody had anything, and after World War II and the great sacrifices of the great, the greatest generation, people sacrificed for their country and for their families. And, I'm not saying there wasn't all kinds of bad things in society. Like we used to have lynchings. We used to have, like much more unreported child abuse and all kinds of horrors, and more overt, prejudice. I mean, obviously we still have so many problems in society and social ills. I mean, that's well documented, but, obviously we've made a lot of progress in society, but there's been a lot of, I think, slippage in terms of moral decay. We have kind of like an entitlement society. I mean, the number one way that I think America is being killed is from the inside, is from our psychology. It's like everybody wants to be a gamer. Everybody wants, VR. Everybody wants checks from the government. Everybody wants universal basic income. I mean, some of this may be necessary because, obviously of a pandemic and because of artificial intelligence, but people are losing the mental and strength of fiber to be self, resilient. Like I believe in kind of a middle ground. I ran for governor as an independent because I believe in personal initiative and personal responsibility, which is kind of more a hallmark sometimes of the Republican Party. And I believe also in the Democratic Party that it takes a village. It takes public education. It takes public roads. Nobody achieves things all by themselves. So I'm not saying it's one side or the other, but I do think that we're looking for other people, to save us now. And part of it is that, the system has been set up so that it basically, I'm not going to say it, but just the abbreviation F's us over. People only have a 12% approval rating of Congress because they feel like, Citizens United, corporate interests, corruption, lobbyists, revolving door, and, stalemate, nothing getting done in Congress. And people feel like their institutions are not helping them. People feel like their institutions, are not meant to serve them, and so I think the decay from the inside, when people lose trust in their institutions, then they stop, believing in them, they stop turning to them, they stop, trying to make the system better, and they kind of opt out, or they just try to work around the system, which is very, inefficient and very, ineffectual. So kind of summing up, what's killing America. I think what's killing America is the fiscal policy. I mean, obviously the pandemic is not helping. And I think the entitlement kind of mentality, but I think the entitlement mentality is kind of been, encouraged by the government, because I think the government has been kind of we'll take care of your problems. And the government has done a lot of overreach. I think government is best when it empowers individuals, when it empowers states. The government, I think the federal government is just trying to disempower, is trying to disempower states, is trying to disempower individuals, just saying we'll be a caretaker, we'll pick the winners in industry, we'll give you free money. What it should be doing, we'll give it to the corporates. So I think that in terms of solutions, I think that there's always force and counterforce. I don't mean actual force. I just mean, thinking. So it's you have a thesis and an antithesis, like an idea and then a counter idea. That's a better way of putting it. And because I don't believe in force, violence is never the answer to anything. They say no matter what the question is, love is always the answer. Love is the healing principle, and love is the beautiful principle of life. I think that what's happening is that, the more people become dependent, it feels good up to a point, but after a while you feel like you lose your own life. People feel like we're living in a simulation because everything is done for us. Like gaming, I had a big podcast on it. It's people are turning to gaming more and more and more. Gaming can build some good skills because we feel ineffectual in the real world. There's so many forces coming out against us in the real world. We like to have VR because in VR we can, and gaming, we can control our environments. We get points for, doing this. We get points for doing that. We have efficacy. We have agency. And that's why people are turning more to virtual things than to real people. It's like people can frustrate you. People cannot do what you want. People would rather interact with VR or with robots or things that really are going to do what they want. People are losing the ability to be frustrated and to deal with real human beings.